Hello viewers, and welcome to Exploring Cinema with Brian Meadows. I, of course, am Brian. Thank you so much for joining me in my review today. I do want to go ahead and get out of the way. I won't actually be filming for the next few days. One of Mallory's old friends, Beth, is actually coming to visit us, and she'll be staying here. So I don't want to film too much or do too many scripts for my videos whenever she gets here, so I'm going to try to record all of the videos today and then maybe see if I can schedule them to upload on the specific days. But if it doesn't work, then I'm going ahead and telling you that right now, so that just in case there is a bit of a waiting period, so that I can apologize. Today's review is on the new Netflix original movie War Machine. So this film is based off of a non-fiction book called The Operators by Michael Hastings, and tells a bit of a fictionalized version of the events in the book that are based around the firing of U.S. Army General Stanley McChrystal after he attempted to bring the war against the insurgency in Afghanistan to an end. And when I say it's fictionalized, I mean to say that though this story is based on a true story, some names have been changed. Brad Pitt plays General Glenn McMahon, which honestly I thought was funny because that's the same last name as my boss. But he plays General Glenn McMahon, based off of the real-life General McChrystal. Now, I don't know hardly anything about McChrystal, but what I do know is that he conducts himself as though he's kind of cyborg-like. And while he portrayed McMahon, Pitt exaggerates McChrystal's cyborg qualities, doing things like running 7 miles every morning, eating 1 meal a day, and then sleeping for maybe at the most 4 hours a day. His movements are very boxy to the point where it's as though he never turns around. He scrunches up his face so tightly when he speaks in terse sentences, and he speaks in a gruff voice. And listening to Pitt actually speak in the voice reminded me of how he spoke as Lieutenant Rain in the Inglourious Basterds movie. McMahon is definitely from a different era, seeming to prefer taking the fight straight to the enemy, killing every single one in sight. But then he's forced to adapt to his surroundings, because these days you can't just shoot at everybody, because we're not fighting against armies with distinct uniforms. We're fighting against insurgents, people who just decide to join a cause and they don't really have a uniform. In this area, you can only fire at somebody with your weapon if they are brandishing a weapon. McMahon is very smart and disciplined enough to know that Afghanistan isn't a war that's going to be won just through fighting. His mistake is thinking that it's a war that can be won, though. That's his problem. All in all, Pitt was fantastic in this role. He was honestly my favorite part of the entire film. Actually, most people who've seen the actual movie will probably say he is the best thing, and is that kind of sad? A little bit, but I'll get on to that in a second. As for the supporting cast, they all do a really good job, though there are too many to call off, and frankly, I didn't know half of the people who actually were part of the supporting cast, and they kept throwing their names around so much, I honestly lost track of who all they were. Though we do have, I do have to mention that we have 2 legendary performers, like Tilda Swinton and Ben Kingsley portraying smaller roles. Tilda Swinton plays a foreign, I don't remember what she was. She was either a diplomat or a reporter. They didn't exactly show who her character was. And then Ben Kingsley plays an Afghan president. I do have one complaint when it comes to characters, and it's this. McMahon has a wife. I don't remember her name, nor do I care to try. She is probably in the film maybe less than 5 minutes, and the chemistry between the 2 lovebirds of 30 years is non-existent. Now, I will point out that they do actually, there is a point where one of them mentions that they had only seen each other at the most 30 days a year for the past 8 years. But that's irrelevant to me. I spent their entire shared screen time just wondering, how the fuck are you guys married? I can't see why you lasted 30 days, let alone 30 years. As for the story itself, it's an alright story. It's honestly, it's a little bit boring, but Pitt was entertaining enough to watch that it was able to keep me invested. In this film, for the U.S. military, all the forces, which like management, intense, and I still can't speak, intense press scrutiny, impatient constituents, etc., they all work in opposition to radical innovation, which is what McMahon is trying to do with this idea of counterinsurgency, which is basically, you know, just fighting the insurgency. Like, I think he had explained it as somewhat close to guerrilla warfare, but not really. But anyway, War Machine takes aim at all of the components causing this machine to malfunction, this machine being the U.S. military. Nobody comes out looking good. Not McMahon, any of the senators or business people that he has to talk to. He talks to a lot of politicians. Not even the president, who at the time was President Obama. Even he didn't come out looking good. And here, with this film, we have an existential military film that places McMahon as an easily replaceable hamster running on an enormous and very expensive hamster wheel. Maybe he's running too fast or even too slow, but it's not the speed that is the problem here. It's the wheel itself. And hell, maybe McMahon's strategy of counter-insurgency is brilliant, or maybe it's simply fucking stupid. Ultimately, it's irrelevant. The moral that's given is that no individual, not even one who defies the limits of human potential or, you know, anywhere close to that, is powerful enough to compensate for the faults of a system as big and powerful as the U.S. Armed Forces. The film also utilizes a narrator for a fair part of the film, and it can actually help with certain scenes, giving, it mainly focuses on giving necessary backstories to McMahon's advisors, and then explaining why they love him so much and all that good shit. The only problem I had was that the narrator is a character in the movie, but he gets like maybe 3 minutes of screen time, if 2 even. So that's my only complaint about that specific part. The story had an interesting message, but I felt a bit underwhelmed by the execution because the ideas and topics in this film bring up are good. They really are, but the execution lessens its effectiveness. As for another negative, there is one section of the third act where it goes away from McMahon's point of view and puts us, the audience, on the ground with some of the men fighting, and it just comes out of left field and doesn't fit in with the rest of the film. Not to mention that, okay, this is just a problem with me. Am I always rooting for people to die in movies? No, but if it makes sense, it makes sense. None of these guys die. It's only slight grazing shots that don't even injure them, and shots that miss. I think the closest anybody got was they got shot in the helmet, and it, like, grazed it. And, like, what was it? No, actually, I remember. There was another one where a sniper missed them, but they were, like, right on the edge, and it kicked up dust and actually got in their eyes. That was the worst thing that happened. Everybody else survived. I didn't feel like it was realistic at all. Sure, there is actually a moment in there that shows the tragedy of war and the possibility of civilian casualties in that kind of environment, which was awesome. I actually loved that. It made it feel more realistic, but that was the only good thing I found out of that particular section. I'm going to talk about the music really quickly. I felt that the score was mostly mediocre. It was mostly because I couldn't really hear it the entire time. I wasn't focusing on it. And honestly, it wasn't that special. And the soundtrack felt very out of place, using hip-hop music in scenes where nothing is happening. And if McMahon's character seemed like one who would listen to hip-hop, I wouldn't mind it. I really wouldn't, but it just felt so out of place because of it. And I mean, McMahon was a guy who didn't even understand the idea of Skype. and yet he'll be into hip-hop music? No. No, I don't think so. To recap, War Machine displays a really good performance from the lead actor and some supporting characters, but it has a boring story with good ideas that were not executed correctly, a lacking in chemistry between certain characters, and horribly utilized music. I was actually looking forward to this film since we were getting a Netflix original with such a huge star like Brad Pitt. But this film obviously wasn't good enough to warrant a theatrical release, so it only made sense that Netflix put it up so that it would get more viewings that way. And as for the rating, I have to give it a red lightsaber. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me ramble on and on. Now, I must ask you, what did you guys think of War Machine? Did you love it, hate it, were you indifferent of it, have you not seen it yet, etc.? It doesn't matter. I want to know your opinions and thoughts. I welcome new perspectives. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to the channel for more reviews and content. There is always more to come. And for other ways to support the channel, please check out the description down below. Anyway guys, thank you once again for watching, and farewell until the next video.